There's a tremendous freeing energy in the surrender. And the asking for help, man, this can kind of get us into this conversation around some of the masks of masculinity, right? And like it's why it's so hard for so many men to ask for help, because it appears weak, right? Because it is vulnerable, right? And it goes against all of these sociocultural messages that like a real man is independent and is strong and autonomous and can do things on his own and doesn't need somebody to come, right? So like we gotta unravel all of that stuff because none of us were meant to do this alone.
Welcome to Vulnerability Muscle, the inspiring podcast challenging norms and helping you redefine vulnerability as a strength. I'm your host, Reggie D. Each episode of Vulnerability Muscle dives into a variety of topics such as mental health, social issues, and mindset shifts. We explore the power of vulnerability and fostering meaningful connections, healing, building resilience, and promoting personal growth. Sometimes these conversations are uncomfortable, but good workouts often are. So join us and flex that vulnerability muscle. Welcome to the Vulnerability Muscle. I'm your host, Reggie D. Ford. In this episode, I have an amazing guest with me. His name is Jeff Siegel. Jeff is a men's health and wellness coach, writer, and mindfulness teacher at Harvard University. Jeff helps high-performing men break unhealthy eating patterns and build balance, resilience, and confidence in their bodies and lives. So, Jeff, this is so exciting to be with you right now. I think like what I just read is something that I think I benefit from and also am trying to help other people with as well. And so I'm super excited for this conversation. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Reggie. I'm excited to be here and to see what conversation unfolds.
Yeah. I'm curious just what your journey has looked like. But before we hop into that, I want to ask a couple of questions, and it's a segment called "What Comes to Mind." And so you let me know the first thing you think of.
Great, I love it. Let's do this. I'm getting psyched.
Let's go. So, what comes to mind when you hear the word vulnerability?
Mm. I mean, the very first thing is like physical vulnerability. I have a background in martial arts. I did karate like my whole childhood growing up. So, I think about, a vulnerable stance where I'm facing you, right? Like, chest is open, right? Legs are wide. Like, that is vulnerable to attack.
Mm,
Yet, I think the ways in which we use vulnerability in conversations these days has more to do with emotional vulnerability, right? So, like, I think of
mhm,
vulnerability really is, um, it's like it's the willingness to take on emotional risk, right? The risk of exposing my emotional truth in the moment, right? And
mm,
and with every risk there is consequence and reward, right? Like the risk is that I might leave myself open to being shamed, right? And like, rejected. And like that can be so painful. But the reward is that it might actually deepen our connection, right? It might actually bring us closer together to a place that we hadn't even thought. So I think that's what vulnerability brings up for me.
that's good, and I love the what you brought up with karate and understanding like the stance of being vulnerable. And often, like if you're competing or if there is a time when you need to use that, there is an actual attacker that's there.
Mm.
Like you walking around in the stance being what it is isn't vulnerable in itself. It's when that attack is coming. And so thinking about what the environment is like, it really dictates whether or not you standing there like this is vulnerable or I'm just standing in line to get some food, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that's really cool. But
Yeah.
I love your definition. I love what you just said about that. It was really cool.
Yeah, I think that's really important. This idea that like vulnerability is relational.
Hmm.
It is contextual, right? Like vulnerability
Yeah.
doesn't just exist in isolation,
Yeah.
right? It always depends on the people or the person that you're with. Um,
Absolutely. I think this is getting outside of the segment, but like I think also the concept of shame is that same thing. Like I
mm,
always try to think of like if we were in a vacuum without other people or without the expectations of other folks, would we carry shame around things that happen? And I don't think that's the case. Of course, we don't get that opportunity to put ourselves in that vacuum, but it comes from relationships. It comes from expectations and what we perceive or think that other people will think and all of that. So yeah,
I
it's
love
super
that
cool.
we're only 3 minutes into this conversation and we've already hit upon shame. which is, it's so core, man. It's so central to all this work that you do, that I do, right? That we do to try to help, people live a better life and be well and take better care of themselves. And shame is just this kind of shadowy underbelly that seeps through all of it. And especially for
Mm,
men, it's a really difficult thing to talk about. And yet I find that it's really important, because if you don't ever talk about it, then you never get a chance to heal it.
so true, so true. In the sense of wellness and bettering yourself, what are some things, or what do you do to center yourself if you're feeling stressed or depressed or chaotic?
Mm. Certainly have felt all those things recently, man. Uh, I often like to talk about like having an ecology of practices,
Mm,
or having like a wellness toolkit. So, I mean, the honest answer is I have a lot of things that I do.
mhm.
Um, but I would say that probably my go-to one is taking a walk.
Yeah.
Right? Like the combination of movement, of being outdoors, of breath, of change of scenery, like all of those things just provide a really nice reset, right? And then if I can do it in a
Mm,
beautiful place, with some trees and some nature to connect to, that makes it even better. So
ooh.
that's probably my quick answer.
Yeah, I like that, and it combines so many of those health things. People say breath, people say nature, people say, but you're walking in nature, and then I've done EMDR and understanding the
Hmm.
bilateral activation of right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. That even helps to calm you and relax you. So, ooh, so good. Taking a good
Yeah.
walk. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I know we could probably dig into this later, but yeah, there's a lot going on there, both like physiologically, bioenergetically,
Mhm.
environmentally, like that. It's soothing for our nervous systems, right? And I think
Yeah.
we've lost touch with that, right? Like for most of human history, we lived outside,
Yeah.
right? Like we lived outside and we crawled into like a cave or like a hut for like a little bit of time,
Hmm.
right? And I think recently I read some statistic that the average American spends around 90% of their life indoors.
Wow.
And at first that kind of slapped me, and then I was like, it let it sink in. I was like, you know what? Actually, yeah, I see that. That makes sense, right? Like for so many of us, like spend all day inside. We walk outside for 5 minutes to get into the car, not even for 30 seconds to get in the car.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't even go outside, right? You go through your garage, right? So,
True.
um, yeah, and look, I live up in Boston, man. The winters here suck. It's cold. Going outside isn't always fun, man. But I still try to do it, right? Like I think a day where I don't go outside is a hard one for me.
I love that. Thank you for that. That's a gem. What is a favorite childhood memory of yours, Jeff?
Ooh, yeah, Reggie. I don't know if I've been asked that question. That's a good one. Man, I feel like my memory of my childhood has been like somebody took out that like whiteout eraser and kind
I
of like
feel
blotched
that.
a lot of it out, right? And I don't know what that says about my journey, but I
Yeah.
have I have one memory. That's one of my earliest memories. I was maybe around 5 years old. I grew up in this apartment building in Center City, Philadelphia, like on the 30th floor. We were high up, man. We had a beautiful view of the city, these big windows. And I remember there was this full moon out, and it was just like this big beaming full moon coming in through the window. And I kind of just felt like this like enchanted energy, and I just started like doing this goofy dancing all over the room, just like I don't know what anybody else was doing, but it was just like me and the moon were having this moment of and it was
Mm,
like really joyful, it was really playful, it was kind of silly, right? It like had all of that childhood innocent energy that I think gets beat out of us, right? Like just by
mm.
society and growing up. And so that memory I think is core to me because I always want to hold on to some of that part of that inner child that remembers that joyfulness of just dancing with the moon. Yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. That moment with me and the moon, like that's a book. That's a lot of things. That is so good. Like to get back connected to that inner child is so important. And you brought up not knowing what how the difficulty of pulling up a positive memory from childhood says about your journey. Tell me a little bit about your journey. What does your journey look like from that moment or before and after?
Yeah. Um, I mean, to be frank, I had a great childhood. Like, I grew up in a stable family with two parents. I went to a great private school. I had a bunch of friends. My life on paper was everything that it should be, and yet, when I started to hit puberty, man, shit got confusing. Can I say
Mm.
that?
Yeah,
Like,
definitely. Please.
I think the combination of hormones kicking in, right? Of now this like coming into high school, which is like another level of social pressure and social anxiety and like peer groups and like where do I fit in with all this? What's my identity? Struggling with that. Like this coming into a relationship with my own like sexuality and like sexual desire and like this pressure to like like be attractive or hook up with girls and like and I didn't know what to do with any of that. And to be fair,
Mm.
like my dad was a wonderful dad, but like he didn't give me any guidance on that, right? And like how to be a
Yeah.
man, like how to talk to women, how to be a sexual being. So there was a big vacuum there. And at that time, I had an older brother. He had gone off to college. My dad was really busy with his career. So there was kind of like a vacuum in my life. I didn't have a lot of men. I spent a lot of time with just me and my mom. Um, and actually, I started developing an eating disorder. I
Mm.
think it was kind of a coping mechanism of dealing with a lot of this uncertainty of being this confused adolescent. And I just, for whatever reason, I kind of found food as a way to bring me some sense of control for a world that felt out of control.
Wow.
And I started counting calories and managing my eating, and went down like a horrible rabbit hole where I had to actually my parents had to pull me out of high school. I was in the hospital for a number of months. I had almost starved myself to death.
Wow.
I was in a pretty sad place. And I had this dual consciousness about it, where like I kind of knew what was happening, but yet I felt powerless to change anything, right? Like, and
Mm.
that was so hard for me because I just wanted to be like a normal, teenager, right? Like I just wanted to hang out with my boys and fit in and do all the things. But I couldn't. So that was really, I think, the start of my journey, right? And everything since then has been pulling myself out of this dark place and figuring out how do I heal myself? How do I heal my mind and my body? Because really, I see it as like this. My mind went to war against my body,
Yeah.
and it's like I needed to figure out how to reconnect the two and get them working back together on the same team,
Yeah.
right? And there was a lot of steps to that, which we can get into, right? Like, there's therapeutic work, there's nutritional work, there's exercise, there's a lot of soul healing, there's a lot of having the right support system around me. There's all these elements that I think help me. And so that, I'm the wounded warrior. Now I'm out there in the world trying to help other people, who are dealing with their own body crisis.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that and being so vulnerable in that and opening up about I think even just thinking about through puberty and all the different things that change. And it's just like so much is changing at once and you have very little control over how these things are being thrown at you, but you can't control something like how many calories am I going to eat? What am I going to eat or what am I
Hmm.
not going to eat? It gives you a sense of control, and I think it's helpful to honor that desire for that because it comes with safety and people who may need that safety in that time of life when everything else is not in your control. And so, yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that, and I'm sure your experience has been extremely valuable in helping other people with their issues that they're dealing with because you have lived experience with it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you named that word, safety, right? I think that is so key, right? I mean, to really everything in our life. When you look at all your behaviors and all your patterns, right? Like there is this underlying drive to establish safety, security, right?
Yeah.
So, I think a lot of times we talk about like stress responses. I kind of like to flip that script and talk about, safety styles, right? It's like my
Mm.
reaction to that situation, like, yeah, there was a stress response in my body, but the behaviors and how I adapted my personality and my life, like, was really just a way to seek safety
Yes.
in that particular moment, based upon the tools and the level of thinking that I was able to do as a teenager, right? Like, as you said, yeah, it made like food made sense to me. I could control it, I could manipulate it, I could master it. Like it was my domain to have and do whatever I want with. But obviously there was a tremendous cost to it, right?
Yeah.
Which I'm, yeah.
Well, I'm so grateful and thankful that you are still here with us and that you've able to do some of the healing to get to the place that you're at. I'm curious what that journey looked like for you because it's hard in itself, right? There it's you choose the hard and to go onto a healing journey to be, a healthier version of yourself. What did that journey look like?
I think it starts with surrender.
Mm,
A moment that I remember was uh, kind of sitting on the couch with my mom, and she was asking me about what was going on, how she can help, and I remember just crying. I just broke down crying because I was like, I want to be healthy, but I can't do this. Like I can't do this on my own. I don't know what to do. I'm trying my best, and it was really this moment of surrendering to this fact that there was something bigger than myself going on here, bigger than I could handle on my own, that I needed help, right? So like the surrender and the acceptance of this condition, right, then opened the door for me asking for help. And then through that door came a lot of saints and a lot of
mm,
beautiful souls and a lot of supports,
mm,
in many shapes. And I see that to be true with with a lot of the guys I work with, and people that have been on their own recovery journeys, whether it's with alcohol or some other substance, right? Like a lot of it really does begin with that moment of just surrendering to, like, you know what, like this thing has gotten to a place where, like, I can't keep operating the way I am, like, and I don't know what to do next until I invite in some additional support.
yeah. I think that's so important to understand. Like when you said when you asked for help, all these saints came in. Like that is beautiful because often, like I ask a lot of people, like, what do you need help with right now? Because that is one of the ultimate forms of vulnerability. Is like saying, I can't do this on my own with my knowledge, with my resources, with whatever, and I need help to get to a place or help to feel a certain way and to see that in your journey when you asked for help the saints poured in and you got the support that you needed. That is so beautiful. Like ask for help and
Yeah.
and surrendering. Oof, what a word. What a
Hmm.
more than a word, just energy. there's so much
Hmm.
there's so much in that.
Yeah,
Mm,
there's a tremendous freeing energy in the surrender, right? Yeah, and the asking for help, man. This can kind of get us into this conversation around the some of the masks of
yep.
masculinity, right? And like it's why it's so hard for so many men to ask for help,
Mhm.
because it appears weak, right? Because it is vulnerable, right?
Mhm.
And it goes against all of these sociocultural messages that like a real man is independent and is strong and autonomous and can do things on his own and doesn't need somebody to come, right? So like we gotta unravel all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because none of us were meant to do this alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Where do you think that mindset in our society, where do you think that comes from, or what benefit do we get from making people feel like that is the way that they need to operate?
Oh man, Reggie, that's a big question. uh, I mean, I'd be lying if I told you where it came from, because I feel like this has a long history, probably through the arc of human civilization, right? And it ties
Mm,
into a lot of the big, like patriarchy and capitalism and racism. Like, I mean, I think all of these things kind of feed into each other,
mm,
to create this impression of the right way to be a man, right? Like there is a right way and sort of a wrong way, and all of this is sort of invisible and it's unspoken. And sometimes it's not, but a lot of times it is,
yeah.
right? But it kind of lives in the background of, like, yeah, like the right way is to figure it out on your own, right?
Mhm.
And it's like we're rewarded for that, and that's the thing, is like it gets these sort of behaviors get rewarded at such a young age,
Yeah.
as we're growing up, when we do something,
Mhm.
you say, "Oh, look at me! I figured out on my own. Oh, I'm so proud of you! Like, you're such a
Yeah.
strong guy, right?" Like, um,
Yeah.
and so, like, and I think this either or thinking that becomes
Mhm.
the trap here, right?
Yep.
Because of course there's something awesome about independence and about, like, being able to do things on your own. Like, I'm not trying to undermine that. I think that's great. But it's claiming that it's like you can't do that if you ask for help. No, you can do both at the same time. And in fact,
Right.
actually, when you open up, right, and this is a conversation I had earlier, was like, it's one thing when like shit isn't going well and you need to ask somebody for help, but it's actually another thing when actually things are going well and you
Mhm.
still ask for help. It's like
Mhm.
saying, "Hey, like I want to invite you into this thing, and like, can you help me? Can we co-create something right now that's even better?" Right? That's
Yes.
even better than what we're doing. It's like, so when we ask people for help, we can actually build a bigger vision, and that's sort
Mm.
of blowing the glass ceiling off the top of what's possible. And so, like,
Yes.
I think it's a really powerful practice, and one
It
that honestly,
is.
like, I'm believe me, like, I'm not, I'm no master of that.
Yeah, I love that. And what you said about just like how it's intertwined with all of these different arcs of history and just like big things that have culminated into where we are today. Like it is deep. It's big and some of it is invisible, some of it is not. It reminds me like I went to an all boys private school that
Mm,
it's in a wealthy part of town. It's the who's kids go to this school and I was from the other side of the tracks. So I
mhm,
was blessed to be able to experience very different worlds growing up. And one of the things that stands out about that experience in relation to what we're talking about was our honor code, our honor system. And on every assignment, we had to write. Well, most assignments was just short pledge where we just signed our name and said pledge. But on big assignments, it was on my honor as a gentleman. I have neither given nor received aid on this work,
mm,
and that was the expectation. And I think back to like, no, I fucking need help. Like this is hard. Like this, we're doing Latin and physics and high level calculus and all of this stuff. And it's like we need help. And that phrase isn't even accurate. Like we're getting help. And to ingrain that in our heads to say that on this work, on this journey, in this company, in all of these areas, I've not gotten any help, and it's just not fair to anybody going through life. So,
yeah, yeah.
and
I mean, then
what
back to that the myth of the self-made man, right? Like none of us are, right? Like all of us
yeah,
got to where we are and have become who we've become because of other people,
yeah,
right?
you
And so, I mean, we live in such a hyper individualistic culture that we kind of brush that aside, but it's
yeah,
important.
yeah. And keeping in line with redefining masculinity, let's talk about like shifting from the traditional like hustle culture, right? And
Hmm.
what narratives that instills in us in a healthier way of looking at being driven.
Mm. Yeah, Reggie, that's a great question, and you were pointing to your experience of kind of like bridging these two worlds, which I'm honestly, I'm sure was quite challenging for you at a lot of times, right? Having to like,
Mhm.
be in one culture at school and then another culture at home or
Yeah,
otherwise, right? Um,
definitely.
yeah, and I know you've achieved a lot, right? Like for yourself now, like professionally. And so part of me kind of wants to like bump the question back to
You
you
can,
of like,
definitely, you
like
can, for sure.
what, and then I'm happy to chime in, but I'm wondering, Reggie, yeah, what's your relationship to productivity and this sort of
Mhm.
hustle culture, and how do you balance those things in your life?
Yeah, I love when guests ask me questions because I rarely get to like put my spin on things. So thank you for that. But I think it's shifted for me in my time in my life because I fell in line with the way that things are, the way that the systems are created to drive, to be the rugged individual, to grind to the bone, and it was rewarded. We see
Hmm.
that. We see the benefits that come from that, whether it be in school, in sports, in career, and now in business. Like, and so that was the way that I operated until it became detrimental.
Mm,
And what it looked like for me was recognizing traditional success in its many forms of, the status, the money, the life that people look at and say, that's success. The resume, the social media, that's success. But yet I was miserable on the inside. And
mm,
so today it looks a lot different where I recognize like in my body, what am I feeling? Am I satisfied? Am I fulfilled with the things that I am doing while I am being driven? Because like I was driven for a really long time, driven to do accomplishment after achievement after accolade. I was driven, but I didn't know what was driving. I had no idea what was driving. There was a lot of shame. It was a lot of trauma. And
Mm-hmm.
then getting the awareness around that, it's like, okay, let me make sure that I don't allow those things to be the predominant driver and to bring more awareness to my overall well-being. And that means hustle culture starts to drop. I don't work as hard as I used to. And I recognize that in myself. Sometimes I'm like, damn, I want to tap back into that, but I know what comes with that. And
Mm.
so, yeah, it's just trying to find success while not compromising on my overall well-being.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there were so many great things you said in that, and I'll speak to one way in which I have managed it in my life, right? And this kind of comes from a lot of the kind of therapeutic work I've done, things like internal family systems, but like the value in naming naming the part of you, right? So like I actually have a relationship with this part of me. I call it productive Pete,
Mm,
right? And my wife and I kind of joke about it all the time because like when she catches me like just like frantically like cleaning stuff in the kitchen, she's just like, oh, like is productive Pete out again? I'm like, oh yeah, right. you know and she goes like, are you procrastinating? Like she knows I'm avoiding something, right? And I'm just like, oh damn, shit, like I walked into that one again, right? So but it's really helpful to name it because when you name it, you can see it. And when you can see it, you don't have to be it,
mhm,
and so it gives you a new
mm,
tool to work with, right? And so then when I began to unpack that, yeah, like productive Pete, as you said, like, was really good at getting shit done, like great guy to like, host the party, like, oh, come over, clean your house, or like get the guest list organized, right? Like, I mean, like great guy. If you give him a to-do list, like he will knock everything off there, right? So like, this was a part of me, like, I'm not trying to get rid of him. Like he has a place, but the problem is like when he becomes the only lens through which I see the world.
mhm,
Now, right, everything is reduced down
mhm.
to right, like to one task after another task, and then it becomes, as you said, it becomes soulless, it becomes lifeless. You lose so much because you're just always focusing on the next thing, and then it's just like, well, the journey becomes irrelevant. We're like, wait a second,
Mhm.
let's do a little foreground background shift here. Like the journey is important. Like this is the only moment I'm alive right now. Let me just take a
Yes.
breath. All right, let me like notice how this feels. And so yeah, and there's more I can talk about with that around like my father, and again, kind of like sort of capitalism and materialism and the ways in which those ideas were so internalized in me around like doing something was a measure of my worth, right? And if I
Yep.
wasn't being productive, then I wasn't valuable, as you said, like that, because that's the
Yep.
system we live in, right? um and so from a very young age, like, yeah, that got ingrained in me, right? And so then I thought that in order to be valuable, and also, and very directly, in order to like get the love from my dad, like I needed to be productive and do things and be
Mhm.
a good student and always be doing this and that. So it's like when I see that part of myself getting all active, right, like I need to come back, as you said, like address like that early wounds and let that part know that like hey, I appreciate you for trying to do all these things, but like you don't need to win anybody's love here, right? Like you
Mhm.
are loved just
Yes.
because you're here, you
Yes.
know?
Just
Yeah.
because you are, yes. I
Mhm.
love that so much. Like, I love how you put it, name it to see it, then you don't have to be it. Like I've heard the mantra, name it to tame it, right? If you name it, you tame it. And
Mhm.
and to be able to externalize that part of you and put it over, like, okay, I see you, and then you befriend it, right? Like, thank you for what you, because you've definitely, again, going back to safety, going back to survival, like you've helped me in periods of my life where I needed that.
Yeah.
But in this moment, in this day, at this present time, you're not needed. So I appreciate you, but exit stage left.
Mhm.
And but I'm curious, like you mentioned, like you spent a lot of time with your mom growing up, and what was your relationship like with your dad, and was he working a lot? Was it like, what was that like?
Yeah. Um, so my dad was working a lot. Like he was a professor, but then his career was kind of taken off when I was a teenager, and he was off giving talks and lectures and presentations and writing a book, and um, just wasn't home that much. And even if he was home, he was working a lot. It's like the only time I would see him was like dinner, maybe. Um, and I knew he loved me. Like when we were together, it was always good. But yeah, I think I needed more at that age than what I was getting, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's true for a lot of young men, and I know there's a bit of the talk now of the kind of masculinity crisis and what's going on with our boys, and yeah, I mean, and a lot of the kind of statistics and data coming out is pretty sad. Around young men and how they're showing up or not showing up, right, in school and their lives
Mhm.
and suicide rates, and I mean, and there's all sorts of troubling things, and I think a lot of it does come from this deficit of just like good male role models, right, and like we
Yeah.
and I can kind of broaden that too to like we've lost this culture of eldership,
Mm.
and we've lost a lot of rites of passage that were historically so important to help boys become men.
Mhm.
And now, we don't have that. So like what do we do is like, we have a lot of, people in their 30s still living in the basement playing video games, acting like a boy. Right. And I'm not here to like shame any of the, if that is you, but I'm just saying that, I think this it's not your fault, but it's your responsibility to try to figure out what do you need? What do you need that you didn't get that's gonna help you mature?
Mhm. What do you need that you didn't get? I think that is a question. If you take anything from this episode, like write that down and seriously ponder that. I think we don't have enough time. We're not afforded enough time to really sit back and reflect a lot of times because of that hustle culture and capitalism and 24/7 go. But give yourself time to reflect on that. What do you need that you didn't get? And our stories are so different in many ways, but there are commonalities. And I my dad was not in my life, and for different reasons. My dad
Mm-hmm.
was in the streets, and then my dad was in prison, and
Mm,
yet longing for that attention. It As a boy growing up, like, you felt some of the things that I felt, right? We felt some of the same things, even though our dads were in totally different areas of life. And it has an impact on us. We long for that attention. We long for that positive male role model in our lives, and it shows up in behavior. It shows up in so many different ways. And like I did a talk not too long ago with a group of fathers, just fathers at a
mhm,
school, and it was about presence over perfection, right?
mhm,
Like your kid is not gonna understand, especially at certain ages, how much money you're bringing home, how much like what your status is at work, or like they're not gonna understand that stuff. And you can try to be perfect in all those things to provide for the family, like honorable, great, but they need your presence and your loving presence. And so it's hard when there are, because they're getting that message too. I gotta go do this. I gotta go do this. I gotta work. I gotta do. And but I think presence and showing up consistently and lovingly is what many of us didn't get. And it leaves us lost, and we're searching for validation in other forms. And it just
mm,
it's hard. It's hard. So
mhm.
uh, man, I just got
Yeah,
emotional.
I know. Thank you for sharing that, man. I know. Do you and your father have a relationship now?
No, no. We had one. We had one for a while. I love this. Thank you for asking me questions.
Mm,
We had one for, I would say, about a decade, about 10 years in my early adulthood. And it wasn't as much of a father-son relationship, more like a brother to brother relationship. So he was my big brother.
mm,
Uh, and we were really close, really tight. But then, spoiler alert, if you haven't read my book,
mhm,
but like it didn't end that way.
mm,
And I don't know, I still leave hope for things to change, but talk, boundaries and peace and understanding safety.
mhm.
At this current moment, that relationship doesn't bring that for me, and so it's a huge boundary in place there.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
yeah,
I mean, I feel
yeah,
like there's a lot to talk about there too, right? Like,
yeah.
that's another thing that our culture really sucks at is like teaching and modeling how to consciously and compassionately end a relationship.
That's huge. Have you ever had an opportunity to do that?
Oh, man. It's funny you asked. It's actually been kind of top of mind recently. Like I have a buddy that I've known for, decades, and he has just become very, very difficult to be friends with.
Mm,
And it's been rocky and on and off, and I don't need to get into all the details. Like, I think he needs some real kind of, he's got some mental health challenges. I think he needs help. He kind of refuses to get help. But it's reached a point where I'm like, I don't know if we can continue being friends until you get help, right? Until you like, if you unless you show up differently, right? Like this is not working, right?
mhm,
And I say that with so much love because I want what's best for him,
right.
right? But like, I can't have somebody coming into my life and my family and just acting a fool and being destructive and chaotic. Like, that's just not the sort of energy I'm trying to invite into my home, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, that's the boundaries.
Yeah, it's huge, and we need boundaries in all aspects of life, whether it be work, whether it be home, and that. I wanna. So you have a master's in mind and brain education from Harvard, and a master's in Buddhist studies from Hong Kong University. Amazing, like wow. Uh, Tell me what the journey was to getting to that place in your educational journey, and what you learned about those studies.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of smile and laugh to myself when I hear you say that because I'm just like, yeah, like how the hell does that compute, right? Like, Buddhism, mind brain education. Um, I kind of joke that I'm thoroughly overeducated, right? And it comes with the occupational hazard of having your head up in the stars, and you forget to look down to see whether your shoelace is untied, right? And then
Yeah.
you trip all over yourself. So I always try to, I think that's been a real theme in my journey, right? Of like, I love academia and big picture thinking and these sort of like big intellectual ideas. But for me, the important piece has always been the embodiment, right? Like, how
Mhm,
do I bring it back into my body? Because that's where it lives.
mhm.
That's where I'm going to express it, right? That's where it all integrates. That's where my journey started with my own body. So um yeah, the real kind of too short story on it was I had graduated from college with a plan to go to medical school. Like I really liked science and really, again, understanding the human body and what made it work and what made it healthy, what made it unhealthy. But I was also very disillusioned by the rat race of American culture. And I was like, I don't want to get caught up in this test taking and then the grind of medical school and then the whole like just earning money to buy a big house, sort of script. So
Mm.
I actually bounced out. I moved to Malaysia. I lived
Wow.
in Malaysia for a year. Then I lived in Hong Kong for 4 years. And when I was in Hong Kong, I did that master's in Buddhist studies. And I was really, I think, just searching for something spiritual, right? To nurture my soul and my heart in a way that I didn't get back at home. Right. Like,
Mhm.
I got a lot of the Western scientific view of the world, which was great, but I was like, it can't all just be about neurotransmitters, right? Like there's something else here.
Yeah.
So, that's when I really got deeply interested in Eastern spiritual practices and what are non-dual states of consciousness and what is the Tao and how do we live
Let's go into
in
that.
that?
Let's go into
Okay.
that. Yeah, explain that, the non-dual states. I love that.
Well, the Tao which can be spoken, right, is not the actual Tao. That's sort of the irony of like you can't really put language, right? We run up against the limitations of words here to explain these experiences that really transcend our normal everyday waking consciousness.
Mm,
And but and I think these sort of experiences are actually pretty common, but I think it's again they're hard to talk about. One, because we don't have the language. Two, because again our culture doesn't really support that, right? Like
right.
the people either think like you're crazy or you're on a bunch of drugs or I mean, and maybe it's a little bit of both, but like it kind of brings us back into relationship with the magic and the mysteriousness of this world that we're in, which I think
Mm,
again we've kind of we've lost so much of that. Everything is just materialism and
mhm.
so when I wake up in the morning and when my heart starts to feel kind of empty, I think that's because I've gotten too sucked into the materialism. And it's like, there's something calling me back into like, what is this spiritual, other higher, you know, dimension
Yeah.
to our being, right? And again, I mean, also, I mean, religion has sort of decayed over the last few decades, although it's coming back. Right? I mean, it's like there's different ways in which people access this, but um, it's hard because it's not something that we typically talk about, right?
Yeah.
Especially, yeah, again, like guys aren't sitting around talking about their spiritual journeys very often, right? But like,
Yeah.
I kind of wish they were, because like
Me too.
that's the stuff that's what brings the real meaning, man. Like, yeah, like
I
this
love
life
that.
it's
Yeah.
about me, but it's about so much more. I want to hear about that, right?
It's so much bigger than us. And I have found that Eastern culture and spirituality. Like love seeing Buddhist studies because I mean I went to Thailand what 2 years ago now, and
Mm,
it was one of the most peaceful experiences that I've ever had in life. Like I don't think my body has felt that amount of peace in the States ever. Right. And so being in that culture for the first time and the only time to this day, but I'm going back, and it's just like the ways in which they live, like it is totally different. Like the values and the things that are prioritized are that of well-being, are that of peace, are that of presence. And it just I mean, I remember just the first person I saw napping in the middle of the day while working. Like it's things are different. And to connect it deeper of, like me and you and that squirrel, like we're one, like we're all connected. When you
mm.
understand that there is water and there is this energy that is flowing and it doesn't ever get destroyed and it's all connected, like it really, now we're gonna start sounding crazy to people. So
No, yeah, I'm
but
ready.
like
I mean, yeah,
but
we can go there, Reggie, man. Like,
it
yeah,
just
like go all the way back. We're just stardust, man, that have been
we
on this
are.
incredibly wild, insane journey over billions and billions of years to somehow organize ourselves into this thing that we call like a human being, and it's
Yeah.
absolutely wild.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think, yeah, just the fact that we can step back and take that view, and again, just like it just helps ground this moment a little bit differently, right? And just
Yeah.
like puts things into a different perspective.
Yeah.
Um, because it's easy. I find that, most of the stress and the worry and the anxiety like comes because we get so hyper focused, all right, on this like our one tiny individual little sliver of the world and our tiny little individual problems that we think are, the biggest things ever. And like, yeah, like on one level, like I don't want to minimize those individual issues, but like again, we want to hold this bigger picture of like, oh yeah, like, yeah, there's a lot more going on here, right? And life will
Mhm.
continue on way after we do, and has been here, and it's going to change forms. And accepting that there is, again, I think that, one of the biggest important pieces of Buddhism is really not trying to get rid of the suffering, right? Like accepting that, right? Like
Yeah.
life is really hard. Life is
Yeah.
can be a total shit and unsatisfactory. And instead of trying to run away from it, which I think our, kind of consumerist culture tends to do, right? Kind of put up this veil that like, well, if we just buy more things and possess more stuff, right, and collect more degrees and get paid more, then all the
Yeah.
suffering will go away. Like, no, like the suffering's
It's
gonna
still
follow
there.
you, right? Like,
It's still there. That's so true. I'm curious what your thoughts are as it relates to like kind of our conversation around the hustle culture and masculinity and like redefining those things. But how does that, is there a role for that in corporate world, in corporate culture, in a capitalistic society? Like, is there a way to reduce the stress and everything that comes with hustle culture and this flawed view that we have of masculinity in the world today?
mm. I mean, I think you're asking an interesting question here, and I'm not sure if I totally grasped like the parts of it
Yeah. Is
around where
is
does it
there a
live, but
role?
mhm.
Let me limit it to, let's
Okay,
call it corporate culture in work environments. Is there a
okay, yeah,
role to tame the hustle culture in
mm,
corporate environments that still benefits that environment?
yeah. Ooh, let me share some personal examples, right? Like I have gone into corporations, right? They have hired me to teach mindfulness, right, to their employees as kind of like a wellness benefit,
Mhm.
um, and and I've gone in there and we've done workshops, right? And we've done all different sorts of, meditative techniques and breath work and some mindful movement and, um, but it got to a point, with specifically, I'm thinking of one, example where it was like, I actually had to sever that contract and relationship. Is like, because I was saying, like, I don't want to be coming in here to just try to, right, it's sort of the opiate of the masses, right? Like, I'm not here
Band-aid
to
over,
just,
yeah.
right, like, to just like get your employees to calm down so they can be slaves at the desk for another 12 hours, right? Like, because like,
Mm,
if your company culture is so toxic, then
mhm.
like no amount of mindfulness, no amount of like breathing is going to help
Yeah,
overcome that, right? Like, yeah, I mean, it might help a little bit, of course, but like there are larger structural issues that really
yeah.
we need to address that, right? So um and the flip side, I have seen companies that actually honestly, like, they really do care about their employees well-being, right?
Mhm.
Like, like, they give employees lots of time off, like they have really good like maternal and paternal leaves, which is just a huge thing like for new parents, right? Like they offer a lot of benefits, like, they have good boundaries around, not sending and checking emails in the middle of the night, right? Like there's a code of respect from how bosses interact with their underling, people, so that, it feels like there isn't this like oppressive power over, right? Like, I think there are ways you can set up companies that obviously support well-being, but like that has to be ingrained in the DNA of the business.
It absolutely it has to be pervasive. It can't be like you said, like this one-off initiative over here that lives in this silo. And that's one of the things I ask, like when I go to speak or go work with companies or organizations, it's like I recognize that I am one pillar to a wellness approach or whatever it is. But what else are you doing to signify to your employees to show that the culture has shifted or is what it is around well-being? Because if it's just one conference a year and that's it and there's no other talk around it, then you're not doing the work that you think you're doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome, man. I mean, and that takes courage to do that, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, it does. It's not easy, right? Especially like if somebody's paying you to do something, right? And I think a lot of times we bend, and I'll speak
Yeah.
for myself, right? And like, this is one of my fears, I think, of being hypocritical, right? In saying that I stand for all these things, yet,
Mhm.
I'm willing to compromise my values because I'm getting a nice paycheck for it, right?
Right.
Or, it's, and this is the challenge. Like, whenever we push back against systems, it's going to be uncomfortable. And there are
Mhm.
times like the system will retaliate, right? Like, I mean, there's real risks with that. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, like that's what it takes to be
Mm.
kind of a wellness, renegade.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that. The wellness renegade. Yeah. It's so true though, because there are and it starts off subtly. And there are these moments where you have a decision to make, right? You recognize that that's something that this company or this organization stands for or doesn't stand for, and it doesn't align with what your values are. And you can accept that or you cannot. You can address it or you cannot. And that starts to creep up, and if you do that more times than not, like when you deviate from the standard enough times, the standard changes, like your
Yeah,
values have changed at that point, and you have to reevaluate what your values actually are if that's what you're willing to accept.
yeah,
And it's hard, especially when I can't believe you came back from Hong Kong and Malaysia, like, honestly, like, but when you're in America and that is the system and you have to live in that system, work in that system, it's hard because you have to pay the bills and you have to, conform in a way. So,
yeah.
man.
It's really hard, and I've kind of chosen this route of, entrepreneurship, solopreneurship, right? Like, to
Mhm.
kind of, exit out of that system as much as I can, but I'm still beholden to it, right? In other ways,
Yeah.
right? And complicit in it. And yeah, I think you're pointing to an important piece, right? This tension between sort of, like individual change and collective, or, structural change. And sometimes it really is just bottom up, right? Like, one person says,
Mhm.
you know what, I'm not going to tolerate this anymore, right? And I'm going to push up against the status quo, right? And then you get enough people doing that, and the status quo changes, right? And
Yeah.
there are other times where it needs to come from the top down, right? And whoever that person is in charge or making the rules, right? Yeah, actually, set things up in a way that actually is supporting justice, right?
Mm.
And in humanity.
Yeah. I would be remiss if I had this Harvard educated person on mindfulness not to give us some tools and tips around building mindfulness and resilience in our own life. Can you give us some things that people can practically apply to their lives to help them in that regard?
Yeah, we can do it right now, right?
Let's do it.
Just take a breath in, all right? And I want you just to hold that breath at the top for a second and just let it out with a sigh. Great. We're going to do that 2 more times. And all I want you to do is each time just make the exhale a little bit longer. So, number 2, give it a try, breathing in. Just hold that breath, feel that fullness, and then big sigh. Even more, just going a little bit longer than you normally would. And then one more time. And remember, there's no rush. We're not trying to get through this breath. Like just be in this moment of breathing. So feel your lungs, feel your body from the inside out, feel your weight, and then let it go. And if there's anything else you want to let go right now, just like you're giving your body, you're giving your minds permission to just release.
I love it. I love it. Mm. I love what you said, not rushing that breath, not rushing that day, not rushing that moment, not rushing through life. Like the phrase, I'm trying to eliminate the phrase, I can't wait for because I can and I should live all the moments of life in between now and whatever that moment is in the future. And I love what you said. Just don't rush that breath. I got to remind myself of that in a yoga class because sometimes, when you're being instructed, you want to keep up with the pace, but my breath is deep. My breath is long. It wasn't always that way. Like when I was still in survival, it was very short, very choppy, couldn't take deep breaths. But now it's very long. And if I'm moving breath to movement, I have to elongate that hold, that pause, that whatever. And sometimes I find myself cutting my breath short. But thank you for that reminder. That was good.
You're welcome. Thank you for that example, right? And I mean, slowing down is one of the most important and really kind of like radical things, right? Because like we live in a culture, right, that is it's speed up, right? Urgency,
Mhm.
scarcity, go faster, right? Like do more. So in many ways, the slowing down, right, is like a countercultural act.
Yeah.
Uh, right? It's saying like, hold on a second, yeah, like what are we all rushing towards? Our own death, right? Like,
Right.
um,
Yeah. It's so
you
true.
know,
It's one of the things I it frustrates me, but I also appreciate it in my friends who are like from the islands. Cause when you're on island
yeah,
time, there's like
yep,
nothing that I'm
yep.
rushing toward. And so like we got 12 o'clock lunch. Like where you at? It's 1 o'clock. And you're like, hey, I just got here. And it's like, but it's a beautiful thing because they're not rushing through life. And that is built into their culture. It's hard when you try to adapt that to what we are experiencing and used to, but there is a beauty in that too. So it's
Yeah, I mean,
frustrating and I
I love that
appreciate it.
example of I mean, dude, I'm a total beach bum at heart, man. I love island life, as you said. I love Thailand for all those
Yeah.
reasons. Yeah, and I think that's our relationship to time is another thing that's really important
Mhm.
here, right? And like that comes out, kind of slaps you in the face when you leave the U.S., you travel somewhere else, and you see, like, oh, these people aren't checking their calendar because they got an appointment in 35 minutes, right? It's like their life isn't, you know, hour by hour blocked off and scheduled,
Yeah.
like, I mean,
Yeah.
yet that is the reality for so many of us these days,
Yeah.
myself included, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just like uh, reclaiming this more natural, easeful relationship to time, where it's like,
Mm.
there's morning, there's afternoon, right? Like it's solar time, right? Like it
Mhm.
passes, but it's not it doesn't move any faster, any slower than it needs to. It just there's and that's, I think, there's something, which kind of will go full circle. I think that gets lost in part because we're not outside.
Yep. Yep.
Right? Like, so like
Yep.
we're stuck inside with these artificial lights. We're on this artificial time. Like everything
Mm.
about the way we're living, right? Like is kind of artificial. And that
Yeah.
creates a lot of distress and dis-ease,
Mm.
right? And so if we're talking about well-being, right, it makes sense to like, okay, like we gotta think about how we're relating to time.
I love that. Give the listeners a call to action. I think there's something there. If they're listening to this, there's something that they could do to help their well-being. What is that one thing they maybe can try?
I mean, the one thing I just said was slowing down. I think making a choice to slow down,
Mm.
even just some part of your day, right? Especially if you notice you're the type of person that is always kind of trying to get to the next thing, as you said, or like your mind is always jumping ahead to the next thing, to the next thing. You're forgetting to live in the moment, right? When we slow down, we can begin to notice more. We can, and when we notice more, like there can be a lot more that we're missing,
Yeah.
right? And it's like we get, I don't want to miss out on this precious life that I have, right? And now to be fair, there are times though where slowing down is really hard because we don't want to get present with ourselves. And this goes
Mm.
back to some of the hard things I think for men, right? Like the ability just to kind of sit, to sit even just for 10 minutes in silence without distraction. I mean, most men, most people, right, these days just going to reach for their phone the
Yep.
second they feel bored or uncomfortable, right?
Yep.
But it's like we need to train ourselves. We need to train our mind to just learn to slow down and to sit. And even if it's uncomfortable, to not run away from that.
Yes.
That's where a tremendous amount of strength and resilience comes from. Right. And so like that's how we're kind of bringing all of these things together, like, right, slowing down, mindfulness, well-being, right? Like what does it mean to be a man? Or like, I mean, I think sitting in silence for 10 minutes without distraction is an incredible skill to be able to
Mm.
build.
I love that. I love that. Sit in silence for 10 minutes. Avoid the distractions. There's so many. Avoid them. Avoid the phone, the TV, the social media, the phone, all of it. Like, and sit with yourself, sit with your thoughts. If it's uncomfortable, there's growth there. There's growth to
Mm.
be had there. So, man, I could talk to you all day long, Jeff. But before we
Yeah.
close out, I got a segment called fill in the blank. And so, for again, similar to the first thing that comes to mind, but vulnerability makes me feel blank.
Vulnerability makes me feel alive.
I love that. My biggest strength or superpower is blank.
Mm. My biggest strength or superpower is uh, helping heal the mind body connection.
Yes. I need help with blank.
Mm. I need help uplifting and empowering other men to do the work and becoming the best version of themselves.
Let's go. Let's go. We're recruiting, y'all. We need
Hmm.
more. If I could tell my younger self one thing, it would be blank.
Yeah, if I could tell my younger self one thing, it would be I'm here for you. I'm
Mm,
here for you, and there's nothing you need to be that you aren't already are, right? To win approval, to so that yeah.
mm, I love that. I love that so much. Wow. I'm gonna just sit with that for a little bit. Thank you. And the last one is when I need inspiration, I turn to blank.
Mm. There's two things that come to mind. The first one is trees. I love watching trees blow in the wind. I love sitting under a tree. I love, I mean, I feel like just trees are wise beyond our ability to understand. And then the second thing is podcasts.
Yeah.
Podcasts like this one. I've got a few of my favorites, but like, yeah, those are like my teachers, my guides. I come back to certain voices over and over, like when I need that perspective or that little
Yeah.
bit of grounding. Because, and we live in a beautiful world. We have so much of this stuff available. So it's just like, yeah, finding the right voices.
I love that. I want to know because I mean, to tap into some of the things that your brain is consuming. What are some of those podcasts?
Yeah, I mean, a few of the good ones that I return to often, like Paul Chek. I don't know if you heard, he's a incredible healer, kind of wellness master. He's got a podcast called Living 4D. Um, that, tons of awesome information there. Really great teacher. Um, Another one, Carolyn Miss.
Mm.
She talks a lot about archetypes and kind of the anatomy of our spirit, and kind of how do we heal at the physical and the energetic level. She's somebody I come back to a lot because I just love her perspective and insight. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Oh man, Jeff, this has been amazing, and I'm so appreciative. I feel like we're just scratching the surface, and there's so much more we could talk about for days at a time. And so, but are there any final thoughts? Any last things you want to leave the audience?
Reggie, I'm so glad we got to have this conversation, man. It's like we come on, and we've never had any prior relationship for, and but I could tell, like, yeah, this was great. I agree. It would be fun to. I want to just like hang out for the weekend and
Yeah.
geek out on some of this stuff. So yeah, we need to run some event, and get people together. Maybe that's the next step.
I like it. We're gonna make that happen. Oh, it's out there. It's gonna happen, y'all. I appreciate it. Jeff, how can people contact you if they want to work with you, if they want to learn more
Mhm.
about your work?
Yeah, just visit my website, Jeff Siegel Wellness. I try to make it super,
Yeah.
super easy to find me. It's just like my name, Jeff Siegel Wellness. You can Google it, or yeah, that's the easiest thing. I got a ton of like resources on there that hopefully can help you take that one next step on your journey. And please shoot me an email, right? Like I want to hear from you. I want to connect. Like, I'm here to be a helper, to giver, and to be of service.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, Jeff, I appreciate you so much, brother. And we're gonna make that happen. With all the things that you could be doing and all the places you could be, I appreciate you being here with me, embracing vulnerability.
Thank you, Reggie. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us in another episode of Vulnerability Muscle. If you've enjoyed these conversations around vulnerability, please consider leaving a review. Your feedback not only motivates us to continue to do the work that we do, but it allows other people to witness the power of vulnerability. Share your thoughts on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or wherever you're listening from. And don't forget to spread the word. You can follow us at Vulnerability Muscle on Instagram and me personally at Reggie D Ford across all platforms. Visit vulnerabilitymuscle.com for additional resources and support. And remember, embracing vulnerability is not a sign of weakness. It is the source of your greatest strength. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but most workouts are. So keep flexing that vulnerability muscle.